I was sitting in my kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at two pieces of paper that told the story of my life. One was divorce papers my wife had just served me. The other was a lottery ticket worth $87 million that I'd bought 20 minutes after she walked out. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Sometimes it has a sense of justice. My name is Tyler Brooks, and I'm 43 years old. Last August, in the span of 24 hours, I went from being a failed husband to an $87 million lottery winner. The woman who just abandoned me for being financially unsuccessful had no idea that exactly one day after she left, I'd become richer than her new boyfriend ever dreamed of being. But let me back up and tell you how 15 years of marriage can fall apart in a single evening. I married Madison Wells in June 2008, right after I graduated law school at 28. She was 25, working as a marketing coordinator, and we thought we had it all figured out. Small wedding at Washington Park, honeymoon in Vail, and a shared dream of building something meaningful together. The first decade was actually good. We struggled, sure, but we struggled together. I started as an associate at Parker & Associates making $42,000 a year. She was pulling in $35,000 at a tech startup. We lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment, drove my beat-up Honda Civic, and ate a lot of pasta. But we laughed about it, called ourselves temporarily poor, and made plans for when things got better. Madison used to bring me coffee during my late nights preparing cases. She'd curl up on our second-hand couch while I worked at our kitchen table, both of us believing that hard work and persistence would eventually pay off. "You're going to make partners someday," she'd say. "I can see it. You care about people in a way the other lawyers don't." For 10 years, I believed her. Hell, I believed it myself. The cracks started showing around 2018. I'd been passed over for senior associate twice, watching younger guys with better connections move ahead of me. Madison started making comments. Small ones at first. Jennifer's husband just made partner at his firm, she'd mention over dinner. They bought that house in Cherry Hills Village. 4 bedrooms, 3-car garage. Different firm, different timeline, I'd reply. My turn will come. But privately, I was starting to worry. At 38, I should have been further along. I was good at my job, clients liked me, but I wasn't bringing in the big money cases. I specialized in personal injury and family law, helping regular people with real problems. Important work, but not the kind that impresses senior partners looking at billable hours. Then my dad died in 2019. Sudden heart attack at 67. Mom was lost without him, and the medical bills from his final month wiped out their savings. She kept the house, but barely. I started sending her $300 a month to help with utilities and medications. Madison didn't say anything directly, but I felt her resentment every time I wrote that check. The real deterioration started in 2020. Madison turned 37, and something shifted. She began following all her college friends on Instagram, constantly showing me their updates. New houses, family vacations, kids in private schools. Her phone became this constant source of comparison and disappointment. "Look at Sarah's kitchen renovation," she'd say, shoving the screen in my face. $40,000. Her husband sells medical equipment. "Good for them," I'd reply, but I could hear the edge in my own voice. By 2021, the criticism was relentless. Every bill that came in, every time we had to decline a dinner invitation because money was tight, every generic brand item in our grocery cart became evidence of my failure as a provider. The breaking point came last spring when I got passed over for senior associate for the 3rd time. This time, they gave it to Marcus, a guy 3 years younger than me who joined the firm 2 years after I did. Smart kid, but his father-in-law was a federal judge. Connections matter more than competence, apparently. I came home that evening, defeated, and found Madison on the couch scrolling through Facebook. "How did it go?" she asked without looking up. "They gave it to Marcus." She finally looked at me, and I saw something die in her eyes. Not anger, something worse. Disappointment. The kind that says she'd finally given up hope. "I see," was all she said. That night, for the first time in our 15-year marriage, she turned her back to me in bed when I tried to reach for her. It was like sleeping next to a stranger. The distance grew over the summer. She started working late more often, going out with work friends on weekends. I was working longer hours too, partly to avoid the tension at home, partly because I was desperately trying to build something that might impress the partners. In July, Mom got diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. Not severe yet, but the writing was on the wall. The specialist recommended a memory care facility within 5 years, and I started researching costs. $60,000 a year, minimum. When I mentioned it to Madison, she just stared at me. "We can't afford that, Tyler. She's my mother, and I'm your wife. What about our future? What about kids?" I'm 39 years old. It was the first time either of us had mentioned children in 2 years. We'd stopped talking about it when my career stalled, some unspoken agreement that we couldn't afford a family. After I make senior associate, I started. When? She interrupted. When, Tyler? You've been saying that for 5 years. I didn't have an answer. That's when Derek Nash entered our lives. Madison mentioned meeting him at some networking event for marketing professionals in downtown Denver. He was a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch, recently divorced, early 50s. Interesting guy, she said casually one evening in late July. Really knows the market. He might have some investment advice for us. Investment advice. We had about $1,200 in savings, but Derek's name started coming up more frequently. Derek said this about the stock market. Derek recommended that restaurant. Derek thought we should look into real estate despite our financial situation. I should have paid more attention, but I was distracted by my own professional crisis and Mom's diagnosis. I was working 16-hour days, trying to land one big case that might change everything. The lottery ticket had been my Friday ritual for 10 years. Same numbers every week. 07-14-21-03-42, Powerball 18. Madison's birthday, my birthday, our wedding day, my law school graduation, the day I passed the bar exam, and our first apartment number. $52 a year that Madison always said we couldn't afford to waste. It's not an investment, she'd say whenever I bought the ticket. It's a tax on people who can't do math. But I kept playing those numbers anyway. Called it hope. Called it faith in our future together. I had no idea that future was about to end. The final month of our marriage played out like a slow-motion car crash. I could see it happening, but I was powerless to stop it. It started with the phone calls. Madison had always been social, but suddenly she was having hour-long conversations that she'd end abruptly when I walked into the room. She'd step outside to take certain calls, claiming it was work-related noise she didn't want to bother me with. Then came the changes in her appearance. New clothes that seemed expensive for our budget. Professional manicures when she used to do her own nails. A haircut at some upscale salon in Cherry Creek that cost more than our monthly grocery budget. Where's this money coming from? I asked one evening in early August, watching her put on a dress I'd never seen before. I got a small bonus, she said, not meeting my eyes. The Morrison account came through. Madison worked at TechFlow Solutions, a mid-sized marketing firm. Her salary was $52,000, and bonuses were typically a few $100s, not enough for the wardrobe upgrade I was witnessing. How much was the bonus? Does it matter? I work hard. I deserve to buy myself something nice occasionally. But it wasn't occasional. It was constant. New shoes, new purse, new perfume that smelled nothing like the drugstore brands she used to wear. The real wake-up call came on a Tuesday evening in mid-August. I was working late at the office when I realized I'd left my phone charger at home. I drove back to the apartment and found Madison's car gone, which was strange because she'd said she was staying in to catch up on laundry. I called her cell. It went straight to voicemail. An hour later, she came home looking flustered, her carefully styled hair slightly messed up. "Where were you?" I asked. "Book club ran late," she said quickly. We were discussing that new thriller everyone's reading. Book club. She'd started attending a monthly book club 3 months ago, always on Tuesday nights. I'd never seen her reading any of the books they supposedly discussed. That night, after she fell asleep, I did something I'd never done in 15 years of marriage. I checked our phone records online. Our shared Verizon account showed her call history, and one number appeared constantly over the past 6 weeks. Sometimes multiple calls per day, often lasting an hour or more. I ran the number through a reverse lookup. Derek Nash, age 52, financial advisor at Merrill Lynch downtown. I sat in our living room at 1 a.m., staring at the evidence of my wife's emotional affair, maybe more. The calls started right after that networking event she'd mentioned. They'd been talking every day since. I should have confronted her immediately. Instead, I spent the next week watching her lie to me with increasing frequency. Book club on Tuesday became dinner with girlfriends on Thursday, became working late on Saturday. The final revelation came when I decided to drive by her supposed book club location. She'd mentioned it met at a coffee shop in LODO. I parked across the street and waited. Madison's car never showed up, but at 9:30 p.m. I saw her walking out of the Brown Palace Hotel with a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit. They weren't holding hands, but their body language was intimate, familiar. Derek Nash looked exactly like his LinkedIn photo. Confident, successful, the kind of man who commanded attention in a room. Everything I wasn't. They stood outside the hotel talking for 10 minutes before he kissed her cheek and helped her into his BMW. She followed him out of the parking garage in her car. I drove home and waited. She came back 2 hours later, hair disheveled, makeup smeared, with a story about book club discussing relationship dynamics in modern literature. Sounds fascinating, I said from the kitchen table, where I'd been sitting with a beer and a growing sense of my own stupidity. You should read the book, she said, heading straight for the bathroom. It might give you some perspective on what women really want. What women really want. Apparently, it wasn't a 43-year-old associate attorney still struggling to make senior associate at a mid-tier law firm. The next morning, I called in sick to work and did some research on Derek Nash. His firm's website showed he managed portfolios for high-net-worth individuals. His personal LinkedIn mentioned a recent divorce, 2 adult children, a house in Cherry Hills Village, and a passion for golf and wine collecting. This wasn't some random guy Madison had met. This was a carefully chosen upgrade. I found myself wondering when exactly she'd made the decision to leave me. Was it after my 3rd rejection for senior associate? When Mom got diagnosed with Alzheimer's? Or had it been building for years and Derek was just the exit strategy she'd been waiting for? That evening, I tried one last time to save our marriage. Madison, we need to talk, I said when she came home from another late night at the office. I'm tired, Tyler. Can it wait? No, it can't. I know about Derek. She froze in the doorway, her purse still hanging from her shoulder. For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something that might have been guilt. I don't know what you're talking about. I saw you with him at the Brown Palace last Tuesday. Your book club story doesn't add up. She set down her purse slowly, like she was buying time to construct her defense. Derek is a friend, a professional contact. He's been giving me advice about our financial situation. Our financial situation? What advice could he possibly give us? We don't have any assets to manage. That's exactly the problem, she said, and suddenly the mask was completely off. We don't have anything, Tyler. I'm 40 years old, and we don't have anything to show for 15 years of marriage. We have each other. She looked at me like I'd said something pathetic. Maybe I had, do we? When was the last time we talked about the future? When was the last time you had a plan that didn't involve hoping someone at your firm would finally notice your hard work? I'm building something. You're 43 years old. You're not building anything. You're treading water while everyone else swims past you. The words hit like physical blows, partly because they were cruel, but mostly because they contained enough truth to hurt. So what are you saying? I'm saying I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend that everything's going to work out if we just wait a little longer. I can't waste any more years hoping you'll become the man I thought I married. We stood there in our small living room, surrounded by 15 years of shared memories and compromise, and I realized she'd already left me emotionally. Derek wasn't the cause of our marriage's end. He was just the catalyst that forced her to admit what she'd been feeling for years. I want a divorce, she said quietly. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire that had been burning for longer than either of us wanted to admit. 3 days later, on a Thursday morning that felt like any other morning until it became the worst morning of my life, Madison handed me a manila envelope while I was drinking coffee from a chipped mug we'd had since our first apartment. What's this? I asked, though the weight of the envelope and the look on her face told me everything I needed to know. Divorce papers, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I've already signed them. I opened the envelope with hands that weren't quite steady. The documents were professionally prepared, printed on expensive letterhead from Morrison & Associates, one of Denver's premier family law firms. Someone had paid their $5,000 retainer fee, and it sure as hell wasn't either of us. Who's paying for this? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Derek is helping me with the legal fees, she said, finally looking at me directly. As a loan. A loan, right. The kind of loan that comes with very specific expectations about repayment. I read through the papers with the clinical detachment that 15 years of legal practice had taught me. Irreconcilable differences. Division of minimal assets. No alimony requested, thankfully, since we'd both contributed equally to our spectacular lack of wealth. I've been thinking about this for a while, Madison continued, as if she was explaining a decision to change cable providers. We want different things, Tyler. You're content with where you are, and I need more. Content? I set down my coffee cup harder than necessary. You think I'm content being passed over for promotion 3 times? You think I'm content watching my mother's mind disappear while I can't afford to get her proper care? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She was quiet for a long moment, searching for words that would make this conversation easier for both of us. I mean, you've accepted that this is your life. You've made peace with being ordinary. And I can't do that. Ordinary. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. Is there anything I can do to change your mind? She shook her head. I've already moved most of my things to my sister's place. I'll come back for the rest this weekend. What about Derek? Are you moving in with him? It's not like that. But her hesitation told me it was exactly like that. That evening, while Madison was packing her remaining belongings, I sat at our kitchen table and did what I always did on Friday nights for the past 10 years. I filled out a lottery ticket with our numbers: 07-14-2, 1-03-42, Powerball 18. Madison walked through the kitchen carrying a box of her books and saw me with the ticket. "Still playing those stupid numbers?" she asked. "Habit, I guess. You know, the odds are 292 million to 1, right? You're literally more likely to be struck by lightning. Maybe I like my chances with lightning." She paused in the doorway, and for a second I thought she might say something meaningful, something that acknowledged what we'd meant to each other, what we were losing. Instead, she said, "You should probably cancel the cable subscription. I won't be here to split it." Then she left for her sister's apartment, taking 15 years of shared dreams with her. I drove to the 7-Eleven on Colfax Avenue and bought my lottery ticket from Miguel, the clerk who'd been selling me the same numbers every week for a decade. "The usual?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, then paused. "Actually, make it 2 tickets this week. Same numbers. I don't know why I bought 2 tickets. Maybe because it felt like an ending, and I wanted to mark the occasion somehow. Maybe because I was so angry and hurt that I wanted to waste an extra $5 just to spite Madison's practical voice in my head. I folded the tickets into my wallet and went home to an empty apartment that still smelled like her perfume. Saturday was the longest day of my life. I cleaned the apartment, boxed up Madison's remaining things, and tried not to think about the fact that my marriage was officially over. I called my mom to check on her but didn't mention the divorce. She was having a good day, remembered my name, and asked about Madison. I told her Madison was fine and promised to visit soon. That evening I sat on our couch, my couch now, with a beer and turned on Channel 9 News for the Powerball drawing. Same ritual I'd followed every Saturday for 10 years, except this time I was alone. "Good evening, Colorado," the announcer said. "Tonight's jackpot is $87 million. The lottery machine started spinning those familiar white balls. I held both tickets in my hand, not really paying attention. I was thinking about Madison, wondering if she was watching the drawing from her sister's apartment, maybe with Derek beside her. Then the numbers started dropping. First number, 7. Madison's birthday, July 7th. Second number, 14. My birthday, February 14th. Valentine's Day, which she always claimed to hate, but secretly loved. Third number, 21. Our wedding day, June 21st, 2008. A perfect summer afternoon in Washington Park with all our friends and family watching us promise to love each other forever. My attention snapped back to the television. Fourth number, 3. My law school graduation, May 3rd, 2008, when Madison sat in the audience wearing a yellow dress and cried happy tears as I walked across the stage. Fifth number, 42. The day I passed the Colorado bar exam, exactly 42 days after I took it. Madison had been more excited than I was. Insisted we celebrate at an expensive restaurant we couldn't afford. My hands started shaking. The beer slipped from my fingers and hit the carpet. "And your Powerball number, 18. Our first apartment number, 18C at Riverside Commons, where we'd spent 3 years eating ramen noodles and planning our future." I stared at the television screen, then at my tickets, then back at the screen. The numbers matched perfectly. Every single one. Both tickets were winners. I had just won $87 million. I sat there in complete silence for what felt like hours. The news had moved on to weather and sports while I held 2 pieces of paper worth more money than I could properly comprehend. $87 million, before taxes, but still. Enough to buy Derek Nash's BMW every month for the next century. Enough to pay off every debt, buy a house, start my own practice, and still have enough left over to live comfortably for the rest of my life. One day. I had won this money exactly 1 day after Madison left me for being financially unsuccessful. The irony was so perfect it felt like a cosmic joke. Or maybe cosmic justice. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text message from Madison. I left my grandmother's ring in the jewelry box on the dresser. "Can I come get it tomorrow?" I looked at the lottery tickets again, then at her message. She wanted her grandmother's ring, a simple gold band worth maybe $500 at most. I typed back, "Sure. I'll be here all day." What I didn't tell her was that by tomorrow I'd be worth $87 million, and she'd given up any legal claim to a single penny of it. The divorce papers were already signed. The marriage was already over. Her timing couldn't have been more perfect. Sunday morning, I woke up and immediately checked my wallet to make sure the tickets were still there. They were real. The numbers were real. The $87 million was real. My first call was to the Colorado Lottery office. They were closed until Monday, but their automated message confirmed Saturday's winning numbers. I was officially the sole winner of the largest jackpot in Colorado history that year. I spent the morning researching what comes next. Tax implications, legal requirements, media attention. As a lawyer, I understood the importance of handling this correctly. The lump sum payout would be about $52 million after federal and state taxes. Still more money than I'd ever dreamed of having. At 2 p.m., Madison knocked on the door. I'd been expecting her, but I still felt my heart race when I heard her key in the lock. "Hi," she said awkwardly when she saw me. She looked different. Her hair was professionally styled, and she was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Expensive. Derek's influence was already showing. "The ring's on the kitchen counter," I said, stepping aside to let her in. She walked past me and I caught the scent of new perfume. Something that probably cost more than our old monthly grocery budget. "How are you doing?" she asked, picking up the small velvet box containing her grandmother's ring. "I'm good," I replied, and for the first time in months, it was completely true. "Really good, actually." She looked around the apartment. I'd cleaned everything, put her remaining belongings in neat boxes by the door. "I finished packing your things," I said. "Books, photo albums, that ceramic mug collection you started in college." "Thank you," she said softly. That was thoughtful. We stood there in uncomfortable silence. She seemed to be working up the courage to say something. "Tyler, I want you to know that this isn't easy for me either," she finally said. Leaving wasn't something I wanted to do. It was something I felt I had to do. "I understand," I said, and I meant it. "Do you?" "Because I worry that you think I'm some kind of gold digger who—" "Madison," I interrupted gently. "You don't owe me any explanations. We wanted different things. It's better this way." She looked surprised by my composure. I think she'd expected anger, maybe some dramatic confrontation. "Are you going to be okay?" she asked, financially, I mean. "This apartment is expensive for one person." The irony was so perfect I almost laughed. "I'll be fine," I said. "Actually, I'll be better than fine." "Good," she said, though she looked puzzled by my confidence. "I worried about leaving you with all the expenses." My phone buzzed. A text from my law school buddy, Jake. "Dude, did you see the news? Someone in Denver won the Powerball jackpot last night. $87 million. Can you imagine?" I glanced at the message, then at Madison, who was still standing in my kitchen holding her grandmother's ring. "I should go," she said. "Derek is taking me to brunch at the Brown Palace." The Brown Palace Hotel. Sunday brunch there cost about what we used to spend on groceries for a week. "That sounds nice," I said. "Tell him I said congratulations." "Congratulations? For what?" "On his new relationship. And for timing things so perfectly." She looked confused. "Tyler, I don't understand what you mean by timing." "You might want to check the lottery numbers from last night," I said casually. "Just out of curiosity." "Why would I do that?" "Those numbers I played every week. The ones you said were a waste of money. I played them one more time yesterday." She stared at me, her mind working to process what I was implying. "Tyler, you didn't." I pulled out my phone and showed her Jake's text message, then opened the Colorado Lottery website displaying Saturday's winning numbers. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. The color drained from her face. "How much?" she whispered. $87 million. The jewelry box slipped from her hands and hit the floor. The ring scattered across the hardwood, but neither of us moved to pick it up. "When?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Saturday night. About 6 hours after you left for your sister's place." I watched her do the math. Saturday night, one day after she'd walked out. One day after the divorce papers were signed. "Oh my God," she said, sinking into the nearest chair. "Tyler, we can fix this. The papers haven't been filed yet. We can tear them up. We can—" "No," I said quietly but firmly. "We can't, but this changes everything." "This changes nothing, Madison. You made your choice based on who you thought I was and what you thought I could provide. The money doesn't change those fundamental things." "Please," she said, and now there were tears in her eyes. "Please, we can work this out. I made a mistake. I was scared about our future, but now you see a different future," I finished. "One with $87 million in it." She was crying openly now. "I love you, Tyler. I always have." "No," I said, walking to the door and opening it. "You love the idea of security. You always have. There's a difference." She stood up slowly, understanding that this conversation was over. "The divorce papers will be filed on Monday morning," I said. "By Tuesday, you'll officially be free to pursue the life you really want." She walked to the door, stopping beside me. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," I replied. "So am I. I'm sorry it took me 15 years to realize we wanted different things." After she left, I picked up her grandmother's ring from where it had fallen and set it on the kitchen counter. She'd probably be back for it eventually. It's been 6 months since I won the lottery, and my life has changed in ways I never expected. I used the money to open Brooks Legal Services, a small firm specializing in elder care law and estate planning. The kind of work that lets me help families like mine navigate the complicated intersection of aging, dignity, and financial reality. I bought a house in Highlands Ranch with a separate apartment for my mom. Her Alzheimer's is progressing slowly, but she's comfortable and well cared for. I can afford the best doctors, the best treatments, and most importantly, I can afford to spend time with her while she still knows who I am. Madison and Derek are still together, though I've heard through mutual friends that his financial situation isn't as stable as it appeared. Leveraged investments, over-leveraged lifestyle, the kind of house of cards that market volatility can topple quickly. She tried reaching out to me once about 3 months ago. I didn't respond. Last week I ran into Derek at a coffee shop downtown. He was sitting alone, staring at his phone with the expression of a man watching his world crumble. He didn't see me and I didn't introduce myself. I just bought my coffee and left. Sometimes I think about that Saturday night when I bought the lottery tickets. If I'd waited one more day, or if she'd waited one more day to leave, our lives would be completely different. But that's the thing about timing. You can't control it, and you can't change it. You can only choose how to respond to it. I chose to build the life I'd always wanted, just with better funding than I'd originally planned. Madison got exactly what she asked for, freedom from a marriage she saw as limiting her potential. She just didn't get the upgrade she'd counted on. As for me, I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't something you plan or execute. Sometimes it's just living well while the people who underestimated you realize what they gave up. The universe does have a sense of humor, and occasionally it has a sense of justice too.